Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to HIMedia Helpdesk. I am your host, Helpdesk. Just for warning, I've been awake 16 hours at this point, and I'm exhausted. Anywho, today we're talking about loops, and as far as loops go, we're going to start with two. The big ones, while and for. And we're going to do a while loop first because it's easier in structure, even though it's not as structural as a for loop. So I'm going to show you guys how this works, and then I'm going to go line by line. While condition. Remember from a previous video when we were talking about conditionals and if and else statements. The same rules apply. This loop will run as long as whatever condition or statement in this between these two parentheses is considered true. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make above this while loop an integer variable, which is going to be something called our iterator. And an iterator is something that counts up or down or all around, that serves the purpose of not making something called an infinite loop, which can crash a program. And if an infinite loop accidentally runs, your compiler might crash, and if you haven't saved in a while, you're going to be hurting. So while I is less than 10, we are going to print out, so we're going to do an S out, two double quotes. We are going to print out I. And then here's where you count up with the iterator. You do I plus plus, which is effectively the exact same thing as, damn touchpad, I equals I plus 1. These two are the exact same statement, but we use the top one because it's quicker and it's proper syntax. So when we go to run this program, voila, with 0 to 1. Now, if we wanted to make this look a little more legit, we would write a 1, and then up there, and then we'd press run main, and then we would have to put this 10 to 11, and we run it, and voila, it displays 1 through 10. So let's go through this line by line again. Up here, we establish an I iterator variable. Then we have the while loop, where we state it's a loop, and then we have the condition that will loop everything following this and run it repeatedly until this is not true. So what that means is, as long as I is less than 11, this code down here will run. And what is this code? This code will print out the current variable, the current value of I. And since I is changing every time we go down to our main iterator, which is I plus equals I plus 1 in shorthand like this, we get it adding 1 every single time, and it will print out the current value of that. Like I said, I'm tired, I'm sorry. Moving on. If you don't understand while loops, please feel free to rewind the video and hear me go through it again. One of the lovely parts of technology. Now, we are going to look at building a for loop. And so what's the difference between a for loop and a while loop? A while loop is a little more flexible. You know, you have the ability to do some things that you wouldn't normally be able to do with a for loop. A for loop is much more quote-unquote rigid, and because everything must be clearly laid out, the chance of a quote-unquote infinite loop is smaller. So how do you write a for loop? Well, you type for to start, and then you have some parentheses here. And then in a for loop, there are three main parts. The first part is your iterer is where you put your iterer. So we're going to make an integer variable of I, and we're going to make that equal to 0. Next, on the end, we have what does it iterate by, and so we're going to iterate it at I equals I plus 1 in shorthand, which is I plus plus. Okay, and then what do we have here in the center? Well, this is our condition. So the condition is going to be I is less than 10. And so, what does this read? Well, it's the same thing as the conditions and stuff outside of the loop, where we have a variable that stores the value of our iterer, which means that whenever this over here ticks up 1, this value will become this value plus plus 1 every single time. So it ends up increasing by 1 every single time. Next, curly braces. Very important. Code's not going to work without them. Then we're going to s out a system.out.println. And then we're going to do the same thing we did last time, where we're going to make I the variable that is printed out, so we can see how the loop works in the console. That's it. Now let's see what happens when we run it. Voila! Now, if we wanted to make this go through 1 through 10, we put a 1, and then an 11, and then we run it. And there we are. So this is exactly the same as our previous loop I showed you. The only difference is the amounts, the numbers of lines of code. If you are a programmer trying to be efficient with the lines of code, especially when you're collaborating with other people and trying to make it as non-cumbersome as possible, the loops you would have to pick here differ. But even though these are both the same, both are adequate solutions to the problem. But if you look, one can be done in 3 lines, and the other has to be done in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. Use the loop that works best for your situation, whether you're looking for flexibility or efficiency. That is your call. This has been HIMedia Help Desk. We will see you guys next time.